After being abandoned by his guardians, a cat finds a magical mansion, but has to face an evil realtor in order not to lose his new family. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, The House of Magic, from 2013. In an unknown place, a car suddenly stops, just to throw a ball for the pet kitten to fetch. However, the car drives on, leaving the kitten behind. The animal tries to chase the vehicle, but other cars appear in the street, about to run it over. Then the cat goes to the sidewalk, where he bumps into a skateboarder, so he gets on his skateboard and is thrown into a car, but then falls to the sidewalk and hides under a bench. At the same moment, a chihuahua appears, asking what he did to be abandoned. After being left alone again, the feline tries to approach a woman, but is ignored. A cat appears and he chases it, finding a mansion. On entering, the animal encounters a huge dog, which runs after him ferociously. The kitten manages to get over the wall, but on the other side he is surprised when the dog emerges from between the leaves in the garden, so the cat goes inside the sewage pipes to hide. However, his pursuer finds him under a bucket, so he quickly runs across the street to a gloomy mansion that makes even the predator afraid. Even so, the kitten continues to observe the house and gets closer and closer to the entrance, where he finds a pet door that is jammed. Some birds enter the house through a very high window, so he decides to climb the tree next to it. Along the way, the feline crosses a very thin branch, so he ends up slipping and narrowly missing the ground. At the end of the route, he comes across a broken piece of the branch, so he jumps and narrowly misses falling once again, managing to hold onto the window. Upon entering the place, the pussycat finds a bizarre room full of spiders and strange trinkets. He is startled by a strange costume, and then by a clown's head falling in front of him, which causes him to slip on the books, falling into a hole, where he encounters scary spiders. Soon after, the cat stumbles over various objects and tries to climb out of the window, but the passage is jammed. When he returns to the room, he is almost hit by an axe and continues to be frightened by the objects in the room, until he comes across a mouse, which is frightened by the cat and desperately runs away from him to the floor below. The rodent knocks several darts into his opponent, leaving him temporarily immobilized. The mouse then asks Jack for help, and a rabbit appears holding a spatula, ready to fight. The mouse, called Maggie, claims that the feline tried to eat her, but he denies the accusation. Even so, the two animals throw him out of the house. In the backyard, a storm breaks out and the cat huddles next to a window that opens, causing him to fall into a basement. He hears voices that lead him to a room inside the house, where there is an old man talking to Jack, Maggie and some magical beings. The guy fixes one of the machines, which suddenly starts moving. In fact, Mr. Lawrence was once a successful magician throughout Europe and Asia, where he performed his greatest show. Before he can continue his story, someone knocks loudly on the door, so the man asks all his creations to hide. Daniel, the master's nephew, breaks into the house but is put inside a magic box by his uncle. He has gone to visit Lawrence to warn him that the power will be cut off for non-payment. The person suddenly starts sneezing, claiming that there is a cat in the room, as he is allergic to felines. Daniel is a realtor and intends to sell the family home for a good amount of money in dollars. What's more, he's going to put his uncle in a shelter for the elderly. Afterwards, the creatures huddle in the living room and Lawrence believes that his nephew is hiding something from him. Suddenly, everyone notices the cat hiding behind the vase, so Jack runs after it, knocking over various objects and waking up his guardian, who had fallen asleep. The gentleman comes across the rabbit holding the feline, so he picks it up and introduces it to everyone by the name of Thunder, which makes Maggie and her partner jealous. What's more, there are a couple of pigeons in the house called Carlo and Carla. Later, the magical beings and animals put on a show, leaving the kitten amazed. Lawrence plays the piano so Thunder tries to help him by stepping on the keyboard, but ends up ruining the music and everyone interrupts the show, but they continue the fun a few seconds later. Before going to sleep, the cat lies on his guardian's bed, who tells him stories. After the old man falls asleep, the rabbit and Maggie show up claiming that the cat is trying to rob the house, forcing him to leave before dawn. The next day, one of the robots prepares breakfast, while Lawrence waits at the table and Thunder plays with the other members of the group. The feline receives a bowl of food and Jack advances towards him, as he realizes that he is using his bowl. However, the magician appears and puts the rabbit into a trunk, which moves on its own behind the man. He then puts the rabbit on his bicycle and heads out into the street, but the kitten stays at home. Still, the cat won't accept it and the man throws a ball at him, leaving him hurt because that's how the one was abandoned the last time. Later, in a hospital, Lawrence performs tricks for sick children, throwing a coin up in the air and causing a shower of glitter in the room. He claps his hands and the trunk begins to emanate lights, so one of the creatures appears and throws soap bubbles into the air. The magician opens a suspended table where he places his top hat. Suddenly, A puff of smoke rises from inside the object and he pulls out a carrot. Then the man uses another top hat, out of which comes thunder, while the rabbit appears in the first hat, making the children laugh when the mouse appears on the presenter's head. Suddenly, the mouse approaches the feline, and the youngsters worry that the predator might devour it. When they take the animal out of the hat, they realize that there is a ribbon inside the cat's mouth, so everyone is relieved and Lawrence introduces the new member of the group, making Jack jealous. During the ride home, the animals inside the trunk plan to knock over the kitten on top of the box, so they push a pencil through the holes in the crate, causing the one to jump on top of his guardian. This causes him to lose control of the bike and drive straight into a busy street. The magician narrowly avoided being hit by a car, as he managed to swerve at the last second. Then a red vehicle appears and he is thrown onto the sidewalk, causing the feline to be hit by the wreckage and thrown near a bench. After fainting, the cat wakes up to find the Chihuahua who helped him when he was abandoned. The dog believes he is evil, so no one wants him as a pet, since he has just attacked an elderly man. In addition, Lawrence may have gone to hospital or home, making Thunder even sadder. So the Chihuahua decides to accompany him to the mansion. After getting close to the house, the dog realizes that it is the haunted mansion in the neighborhood and begins to tremble. At the same moment, he warns his friend that he must return because the rabbit who lives there is known for his cruelty. In the hospital, the magician sleeps with his leg in a cast in his trunk next to the bed. Inside, Jack discovers that he has broken his leg and the other animals hear a noise, realizing that Daniel has arrived on the scene. He hands his uncle an advertisement for a shelter for the elderly, but due to the effects of his medication, he doesn't understand the subject. Nevertheless, his nephew says he'll be back later with some papers for him to sign. At the same time, the kitten enters the mansion and finds all the toys turned off. However, Thunder knocks over one of the toys and the doll starts to move, so everyone goes towards the animal to try and catch it, but they just pet it. Meanwhile, Lawrence receives an unexpected visit. The sick children appear at his bedside and find the magic chest, freeing the pair of birds by lifting the lid. However, the youngsters are interrupted when a nurse enters the room and finds the animals. She then claims that the room cannot house any animals and demands that the children return to their room. The pair of pigeons return home and claim that their guardian is recovering, but Daniel is plotting against his uncle. Faced with this situation, the cat asks Carlo and Carla to keep watch and calls Edson and Twig to follow him. At the hospital, the broker enters Lawrence's room holding a sheet of paper and asks him to sign it, but he refuses. Despite his refusal, the man holds his hand and makes him write against his will, since he can't defend himself due to the effects of his medication. Later, Daniel goes to the mansion with the magic chest. While he's trying to transport the heavy box, a couple comes by to see the house. At the same moment, Thunder understands that the man intends to sell the house without his guardian knowing. This prompts him to come up with a plan to stop him. Just as the couple are about to enter the house, a pigeon appears and does his business on the pair, soiling all their clothes. The woman gets stressed and gives up on buying the house. In the living room of the mansion, Jack and Maggie come out of the trunk claiming that Lawrence is in hospital because of the feline, but he admits that the pigeons were there too, and asks them to tell the truth, but neither of them is willing to talk, which makes all the friends in the group afraid of the cat, but Edson protects him. However, the kitten claims that he can save the house because Daniel is allergic to cats and that he won't be able to sell the house if he's inside. Even so, the animal is locked inside a birdcage by his companions. The next day, a woman comes to visit the house in order to buy the property, and she brings her pet, the Chihuahua that is Thunder's friend. The doves then prepare to launch dirt at the visitor, but Daniel had expected this and uses an umbrella to protect her, which makes her angry at the man's sudden approach. Upon entering the house, the realtor begins to have an allergic attack and leaves the woman inside alone. She decides to leave her dog free to explore, but he freaks out and tries to get out. The Chihuahua enters a room and finds his friend Thunder trapped in a cage. The feline has a plan to escape and needs his partner to bite his tail. Then the cage swings from side to side until it falls to the ground and opens, freeing the cat. At the same time, the dog's guardian climbs the stairs and twists her foot, causing a terrible fall. The two friends head for the exit of the house, but run into the realtor, who tries to capture them using a bucket. However, Thunder manages to escape and heads for the street, leaving only the Chihuahua under the bucket. Even so, when the man lifts the object, he receives a bite from the animal followed by a blow from his guardian. Afterwards, Jack and Maggie believe that the cat took advantage of the confusion to escape, which relieves them. Thunder arrives at the hospital and finds Lawrence with the children. He is afraid to approach his guardian, who admits that he has no remorse for the tragedy that happened, so the animal approaches him. Suddenly, the nurse enters the room, but the cat hides in time, escaping through the window without the woman noticing. At the same time, Maggie prepares to attack the next visitors. She does push-ups and heavy training. The prospective buyer arrives on the scene and his wife arrives shortly afterwards, so Daniel offers to go and see her while the guy is still inside the house. The mouse takes the opportunity to attack him, but the guy doesn't mind. Thunder then manages to enter the house and finds his friend trapped inside a vase, but before he can help her, he is surprised by the humans who return to the house. Daniel has another allergy attack, leaving the shoppers alone once again. The woman goes to the kitchen and finds one of Mr. Lawrence's trinkets. She tries to turn on the robot, but it won't move. However, the blender is suddenly activated, scaring the shopper who approaches the object, so the cat activates it, causing all the liquid inside to be thrown in the visitor's face, which makes the floor slippery, causing her to fall. In addition, the other animals throw cereal and the cooking robot throws pancakes at her. Afterwards, everyone throws her out of the room, causing her husband to be surprised by the scene. This makes the buyer furious, so she claims to Daniel that the house is haunted. Everyone thanks the cat for the group work, but Jack believes that the guy is fooling everyone. So he asks which leg his guardian hurt, in order to judge whether he really went to the hospital. Even though Thunder knows the answer, the rabbit believes he is lying, so he asks the other creatures to capture him, but they all decide to defend him. At the hospital, Mr. Lawrence finds the advertisement for the retirement home and confesses that it would be the last place he would seek shelter. At the mansion, two men enter the house in order to remove all the objects. While one of them is boxing up trinkets, a machine is activated, distracting him, so he doesn't realize that one of the creatures is throwing a bolt at his head. He tries to leave the place, but the door is locked and the machine heads straight for him. The other person checks a noise and realizes that his things are no longer in the box. What's more, his partner comes across a dark room, where the image of a ghost is projected, leaving him terrified. Soon after, he is dragged around the room on a chair that he is tied to, and forced to look at various bizarre things such as a giant eye and hands that move on their own. Then Thunder appears wearing a strange mask and a giant dragon charges at the men, carrying them across the room until they are pushed outside the house. The men run out of the house at full speed and Daniel arrives on the scene to witness a shower of fireworks, generated after Maggie and Jack hit the cat with the explosive, which causes it to fall in front of the man. The stockbroker chases the animal and begins to have another allergic crisis. At the hospital, Lawrence learns that after being discharged, he will have to go to a shelter that his nephew has arranged, but he wants to go to his own home. In the mansion, Thunder attacks Daniel, but his blow has no effect because the man is protected by a special suit. The man then fires his gun at the cat, but misses when a couple of birds get in his way. The feline takes the opportunity to flee the scene, but continues to be shot at until he manages to get upstairs. He tries to hide behind the old furniture, but the broker keeps finding him and firing his gun. However, the animal's friends quickly approached to help and ended up being locked in one of the rooms. Thunder then walks under the floor while the evil man tries to hit him. Unfortunately, the cat is hit by a very heavy box. After returning to the lower floor, Daniel ends up falling. As he removes part of his protective clothing, he encounters his uncle's magical beings. At that moment, Edson snatches the man's gun and drags him after the creature, until he is interrupted by a blow from the robot cook. Daniel defends himself with a sword, but the robot manages to get hold of it and the others take action by knocking him to the floor, so they manage to throw the realtor out of the house. At the hospital, Mr. Lawrence calls his nephew to ask about his admission to the shelter, but the man doesn't want to confess anything, so the magician tries to leave the room and is stopped by the nurse. In the house, the creatures mourn Thunder's perishment and are surprised when something shakes outside the house. Then they come across Daniel driving a demolition machine. He tries to move the steel ball attached to the vehicle, but it won't budge. Meanwhile, his uncle is on his way to the scene in an ambulance driven by the children. However, the broker figures out how to move the ball and narrowly misses destroying his own car. Inside the mansion, Jack decides to go outside, but ends up getting stuck in the animal passageway. At that moment, Maggie asks her friends to help get the rabbit out of the hole in the door, but a wall is suddenly broken, causing the box that hit Thunder to be thrown away, showing that the cat is still alive and saving the mouse from being hit by a piece of wood. When they realize that the feline is fine, all the other creatures that were turned off decide to wake up. Shortly afterwards, Lawrence arrives on the scene and finds his nephew destroying the house. The madman shows him the signed contract for the sale of the residence, but the birds manage to steal the paper from the guy, making him go crazy and direct the steel ball at the mansion. After a hole is cut in the gutter of the house, the creatures make a bridge to cross over to the other side, and Edson ends up falling in, so the boy from the hospital manages to catch him before he hits the ground. Daniel attacks once again with the steel ball, and narrowly misses Thunder, who manages to jump on top of the destructive object, even though the man tries to bring him down at all costs. Maggie asks for help from one of the creatures, who throws her towards the ball, but the mouse ends up falling. Then Carlos manages to catch it in midair, but ends up bumping into the machine, which causes the mouse to fall into the gears. She goes through tight and dangerous places, burning her paws as she dodges obstacles. Then the rodent finds the control cabin, so Daniel manages to capture her. However, the cat appears on the scene and brushes up against the man's face, causing him to have a severe allergic attack, so he loses control of the steel ball and the object falls on top of his car. Afterwards, the mouse apologizes to Thunder for treating him badly and thanks him for saving her life. After a few days, they put on a show in the backyard of the magical mansion and Lawrence performs various tricks using his magic top hat, in which Maggie, Jack and the feline work together. On the other hand, Daniel wants to do business with a lady, but the woman takes care of several cats and this spoils his plans due to allergic attacks. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.